I think that's correct. Oh, that's not a single 1050. That's it's. You're
scaring the attendees. You're making them cranky.
That might be like one of the fourth column tones. To my ear, that sounded like.
Oh man, people are leaving.
Yeah, you scared them away.
Oh, it's 12:20.
Why are we making that noise? So you have this slide again, right? And constantly think about
Empty rooms.
Right. Well, I mean, that's all sending 2033. You want to decide
Go ahead and start.
I guess. All right, that's the start of the session. I'd like to thank both of you for coming to SIPCORE.
So one jabber scribe, one note taker then, right? Who would like to be the jabber scribe?
Thank you.
All right, Jonathan, thanks. How about note taker? Have I built up any karma?
Is there a working group chair in this room that Gene has never taken notes for?
So, were you volunteering to do both?
Did you just volunteer?
Oh.
Okay. Brian has graciously volunteered.
Thank you, Brian.
Now, that said, we started this with the somewhat awkward situation of I don't see our remote presenter. Oh, he disappeared. He's not in the Meet Echo thing, and okay. Dale, if you can hear me, please post something in the Jabber room. Oh, no, the first presentation is from Dale. Let's go over that real quick, actually. So we're going to go through one really quick note from the chairs, and then if we get the whole Meet Echo thing to work, we'll have Dale talk about, yes, the Happy Eyeballs draft, which if you haven't followed that, he's graciously agreed to take over editorship of that and push it across the finish line, so we're excited about that. And time permitting, and if Dale does not show up, I suppose we will have time at the beginning. We're going to have, it's not Rafat actually, I think Krister has agreed to present for Rafat some, I hope, use cases having to do with the SIP OAuth draft that's been sort of hanging around for a while. Okay. I thought I had another slide on here. Oh, there is. I'm sorry. You're right. We didn't actually say note well. Thank you for nobody technically contributing anything yet, because before you do, you need to be aware of the note well. If this doesn't mean anything to you, please go find the note well and read these RFCs cited on the screen in front of you. If they don't make sense to you, find a lawyer and he'll try to help. Oh, good. We have Dale. What was the other slide? All right. One moment. I do need to find this real quick. Apparently when I slammed my deck together, I used the wrong version. Why won't you full screen now? Oh, I see. Okay, so this was up on the web page, but not in my deck. Do you want to take this? I'll take it, by the way. So something that came up recently in the form of several errata is that we've been handling some issues with the fields that can handle name adder and adder spec kind of piecemeal, where the original like 3261 had some language about specific fields saying that if there's something in there that would have basically needed to be escaped, question mark, comma, or semicolon, then you use the angle bracket format. And there's nothing that sort of generally says this is true about all fields that use this production. So Murata came in and basically said, we need to fix this draft and this draft and this draft, but that's not really a very sustainable model. Also, it kind of pushes the definition of errata into technical changes. So there's the discussion happening on list about the best way to resolve this. In all likelihood, what we're probably going to want to do is come up with a short draft that basically says, for all SIP, this is how these are handled. But that's not a foregone conclusion. So if you have an interest in this topic, please get on list and express your opinion and or volunteer to write a document on the topic. And now let's go back to, is this the right one? Yes. Back to Dale. Now I assume that he has some magical control on his side that lets him start talking to us. There's some special remote presenter mode, I think. So Dale, if you have control to join the queue, given that you're not actually going to be like sending video, I think that's probably all we need for now. Oh, he doesn't have a camera. Oh, that's right. Q does let you send video. So Jonathan, is there indication that he's attempting to join? We press the button and see if he magically appears. And 3 times does not make them magically appear, in case you were wondering. We now pause for a brief email break. No whistling during the email break. Do you want to move on to, I mean, I would really like to get through this, but there was a time permitting topic of a non-adopted item that we could go through. Sorry, yes, Paul Kizovic commented in the Jabber room. Yes, please whistle. We need the comfort noise. I think we'll wait. Sorry?
Bill's out of the room again.
Right, I was noticing. I think we'll wait for one more rejoin, and if that doesn't yield satisfaction, we'll go ahead and have Krister come up. Welcome to the end of the week, by the way. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to discuss OAuth for a while, and hopefully we will have time at the end to talk about our adopted items. Krister.
Thanks. Okay, this is something that we have just discussed before, not for a while. The outcome before has been that we need more use cases, and that's basically what this presentation is going to focus on. I'm not going to talk so much about, or anything basically about what it is. I assume you read it due to time constraints. It's basically a framework for allowing usage of OAuth to get access to SIP services. This is about just access authorization. Is not anything end to end or caller spoofing or stirrish or anything like that. Just to make that clear. So next slide, please. And I'm presenting this, by the way, on behalf of Rifat, who unfortunately had to leave earlier for the airport due to the messages that maybe strikes and so on. But anyway, so for the first use case here is enterprise single signed on. Basically, you can use your corporate credentials, whatever those are, and to log into the corporate network, and then you get access to all the whatever services, including SIP services, without really have to use a different account for those. I don't want to speak on behalf of other vendors, but I was informed that this is actually something that people are going to implement. So it's an important use case. Next one, please. Another one which I'm more familiar with is the WebRTC access to IMS, which needs this mechanism because they actually allow you to use your so-called web credentials, whatever those are, to get access to IMS, because these clients, which are normally called WebRTC IMS clients, these can be soft clients, what have you, they are not IMS user agent, meaning that they have iSIMs and all this kind of stuff. So you can use your web credentials to get access to the IMS network. And then you have different functions there, which is called the WAF and so on, but that's not really important, but that's what they call the authorization function. But basically this could be, like Facebook or whatever. So it's not nothing IMS specific, it's just what IMS calls this function. And then when it gets the access token, it uses that to register to the IMS SIP network. It's a normal SIP register request. It's just a new authorization token type which is used, and basically that's what's defined in this document also. So that's why it's needed. And also this is actually something which has this has been 3GPP needs this. It's defined, and I also know about implementations of this already. So it's an important use case. So next slide, please. And this is confidential hard phone, and I think the next slide talks. I mean, these are terminology which exist in the in the author terminology, and what's important here, it has a UE which allows you for the user to provide the credentials, and then again you use this to get the token, and you can register to the SIP network. Next one, please. And this is what we call the public SIP phone, where you don't really have, where you don't even have there's no possibility for you to write your credentials and so on. Basically, it's just the buttons on an old-fashioned telephone. So basically, this came very late to me, so I haven't get it really familiar right myself with this use case. But it basically here says you use an auto or bind method. There are different ways you can do this. You could have a browser, or you could have a small thing where you type your some kind of code and get another code, and a out-of-band mechanism, and you get a short-lived numeric access code, and then you can use the keypad on the phone to enter that, and then you register to the network. I think that was the last one, or could we? Yeah.
John Peterson, I suppose questions are supposed to come from me today, so I guess I will get up and ask questions. I mean, I guess it is not new information to me, at least, that this is a 3GPP requirement. Certainly, I got that from prior discussions of this. I think much more of what we were confused about when we previously discussed this was about the applicability specifically of OAuth itself and its security modalities to SIP flows in particular. I get that people want to do single sign-on, totally understood. Single sign is a very reasonable requirement. A lot of different ways to skin that particular cat. This was a question of why exactly systems that are used to provide, again, when we talk about, when none of the things that were just described as uses for this are things that I think of as being applicable to traditional OAuth flows. They're all applicable to things like SAML and any kind of like SSO systems. And I'm just not. Can you go back like to the? No, yeah, that one. Yeah, it's incapable of maintaining the confidentiality of users' credentials. So what is it about OAuth that solves that problem, for example?
Yeah, like I said, this.
I know that you're not the expert. I know. And I appreciate you coming up and presenting this, despite the fact that this is not your presentation. I think we would need to again drill down a bit more into these than just kind of saying, yeah. I mean, we've talked before about how 3GPP needs this. I get that, right? It's that I totally understand why OAuth is the right solution to a lot of SSO sorts of things in the web, where there is a very different flow and modality to how credentials are exchanged and what it means to try to provide an attestation to a third party transitively through a second party. And it's extremely useful for those kinds of uses, but I just don't understand how that maps on to what this does. So.
All I can say is that I said that the first two use cases are the ones which actually reflect what people are going to implement or are implementing already. That's the enterprise SSO, and this was Rifat told me that this is actually going to be implemented, and this I know myself that this use case is implemented, and it's specified in release 13 of 3GPP.
I know. Yeah, I totally get that it's a 3GPP dependency and that you guys made a decision over there that this is the way SIP should work. And yeah, perhaps that's the discussion we've been having. Right? This is a discussion we've been having like 50 years, right?
I think that's a little unfair.
You just said that it's in your release, right? Now you're coming to us to ask us to rubber stamp something that I am saying does not fit into SIP security architecture, and that this is a decision that I question that you guys made over there. And when you come here and say, please rubber stamp this for me, why are you surprised? I stand up at the mic and say, could you at least rationalize this? The other use cases you presented, I understand there may be things that you're construing. I understand this is what you actually care about, is the fact that this was already specified somewhere else, and that SIP
this is what I personally care about, but Again, this is not the first time I bring it here, so I think it's unfair. So I come here now and ask as a rubber stamp with this, what brought before?
Oh, I didn't mean you in particular. Again, with the first time that this was presented, it was presented with precisely this justification, and I made precisely the argument that I just made, which is that I believe that OAuth maps to a certain set of security problems where it is extremely useful. If we were going to have a discussion about how to do SSO in SIP and have a requirements discussion about that and what that would be, then this would not be a request for rubber stamp. Right? What you have done is you have decided that this is the solution. You have come here not with requirements, but with a solution and said, could you please implement the solution within SIP? And I have consistently, personally said, I do not believe this is a good fit for SIP security architecture. If I'm in the rough on this, if there are other people in the room who would like to say it is more important that we rubber stamp things than that we have like an actual discussion of what the properties of an SSO mechanism for SIP would be, I'll sit down, right? But like, that is my opinion about how we should approach our interface with a request like this.
So John's not alone, and I think that John's request for a discussion of what the actual properties were in the mechanics of trying to integrate OAuth with SIP hasn't been answered yet. You know, I think this is, I don't know if this is a cultural miscommunication. Andrew, do you know who should be trying to answer the question? Do you understand the question that's being asked?
I think both me and Andrew, as far as I know, we're not really involved in the 3GPP group that has actually done this work, which is the security group, the SA3. The only thing I know about, I mean, the high-level requirement was from the beginning that you should be able to use your so-called web credential, use OAuth to get this token, to use your browser client to get access to IMS, because those browser clients do not have ISIM and all these things. So.
And this is a cultural difference, is that is not what we mean by requirement in the IETF. Right? The requirement is not that you use the OAuth token to, the requirement is that you have a single sign-on capability for IMS, right? That is going to relate to what you're doing in the HPE architecture, and I get that, but what you did is you architected a solution, and now you've come to us and repeatedly said, please rubber stamp this.
I'm not sure the IMS really single signed on in because you're only using this, in this use case, you're only using it to access IMS. I think the single sign on was more related to the enterprise use case, which was on the previous slide, where you log in on your enterprise account and you get, in addition to other services, you get the SIP service.
Andrew Allen. So as Krista said, neither Krista or I were involved in the 3GPP SA3 group that came up with the basic security architecture for this. So we wash our hands a little bit in that respect, but I think the problem is what we're trying to do here in 3GPP is to kind of glue the WebRTC authentication and authorization mechanism with the existing IMS authentication and authorization mechanism. So this token actually basically is used basically such that effectively you have the necessary credentials that IMS expects in order to be able to authenticate upon the registration. That's the challenge that they were trying to solve. Maybe there are other ways to do this, but this is what SA3 came up with.
Got it. And I understand that when a set of people get together in a room and discuss something, they reach a consensus in that room, and that's the way that things get developed, right? If there are other people that are expected to participate in that solution who are not in that room, and you then come to them, we end up with a solution like this. So I am profoundly actually interested in what exactly what that story should be, to be honest, of how we reconcile WebRTC security with SIP security and with a variety of other things that we're doing in real time. And I think that could be a subject of a very interesting requirements discussion alone. And this is something I think that, like in STIR, I worry about a lot, is how it's going to be reconciled with like IDP. And that's kind of like an open issue. There are two different JSON things that are going on with that, and this may be yet another instance of that. That's the problem. There's a bunch, if there's a bunch of things like this that we think have some commonality to them, we're all going to have to get together and figure out what is going to work to create a consolidated approach to all of this. And though this is not the way to do that.
So John, to be clear, when you say IDP, you mean the WebRTC IDP?
Yes, I meant the WebRTC IDP. Yeah.
And you're just a question to try to understand from from a process point of view. Has 3GPP already standardized this? It's in a release?
It's in a release. I mean, that doesn't mean it can't be changed. I'm not saying, I mean, there are always possible ways, I mean, it can always be changed. I mean, the reason why we are in this situation here now is because this has taken a long time. And of course, much of that blame is on the authors of this draft, which I'm one of. I mean, the first time this was presented, I don't remember when that was, but that was quite a few meetings ago. And at that time, the IMS work, the 3DPP work was still ongoing. Now, I think it's, what the draft does as far as SIP standardization is concerned is define this new authorization token value for the authorization header. That's you know why we're here. Otherwise, it could be a BCP or whatever. You know, this is how we could use. But we actually need a new SIP element. We need to create a new SIP header field value.
Okay, but the net of it is 3GPP has gone off, standardized this, released it, done it. It's out there in the wild, and now they're seeking.
Well, 3DPP has done their standardized their mechanism, but they're referencing this draft for this SIP element that they use.
Okay, well, I guess
Because they need to. I mean,
to John's point, really, I guess the question is, are they open to any change if this group were to find, to John's point, a different way to do that? You know, would they be open to that, or is this already just baked and done, and there's no interest in anything further?
all the releases can always be changed if there's a reason to do that. But of course, it depends on what you mean by change. If we want to use another header field in SIP, for example, I'm sure that can be done. But if you go to 3GPP and say, we don't think you should use auth to begin with, I think I don't think that's even up to us to tell them.
Right, okay. I was wondering where it was. Thanks.
So, I mean, 3GPP releases, they stabilize over time. That's the process. And things are done by consensus. So, yes, we can make changes potentially. That has to be agreed in 3GPP, and over time that gets harder and harder to do, particularly once people have implementations. I'm not sure how much deployment there's been in the wild, how many really deployed implementations of this there are at the current time, but at some point that will happen, and then it will get a lot harder to change it. So I think we need to move on this quickly if we were to come up with other approaches. And one of the problems, I hear what people say, and I appreciate that view, that we ought to bring requirements in from 3GPP, and that's the way we ought to do things. However, the 3GPP has this release cycles where basically dates are set ahead of time, and then the release has to go out. And basically the way that the processes in IETF and 3GPP work, very difficult to align according to that. So 3GPP has to make some decisions and then try to get something done in IETF, and if necessary, try to change their approach based on feedback we get within IETF.
So in this particular case, there wasn't Robert Sparks. In this particular case, the topic did come up earlier, and there was an opportunity to have a conversation. We asked for some information. It never came. We asked for information again. It never came. We're asking for the same information now, and it's too late, is what you're telling us. Yeah. So, well, except that the conversation is quite likely to come back and say OAuth is a terrible fit. So, but we're not going to know until we get a serious conversation around functionally what assertions are being made with these OAuth tokens and whether or not they're going to work well in a actual, full-bore SIP environment.
I mean, maybe moving forward, maybe we can organize some kind of conference call discussion with appropriate experts, because I think Krista and I are not just the only people that need to be involved in this. I think we need to involve some security people from 3GPP in this as well.
Well, it's Adam Roach, and the bigger point is we need to involve some security people from IETF in this. And I mean, the issue Okay, there are two problems here. One is sort of structural, strategic, and one is tactical. The tactical problem is that this arrived on our doorstep as OAuth, not as we need, something that looked kind of like a single sign-on or token-based, perhaps, authentication mechanism for SIP. And I know that's not how 3G works like nuts to soup. There is a requirements phase, right? So when stuff goes all the way through that without talking to the IETF, and then all the way through, hey, we've identified a mechanism without talking to the IETF, and then lands on our doorstep in this format, there's nothing we can do about that, right? I mean, I'm not trying to dress you down. This is not your problem. It's just this is why things end up in this state where it's like, oh, this has been out for 2 releases, and now people have it in deployed hardware. Like, so what are we supposed to do here?
I think one of the problems was that some people in 3GPP don't really understand the IETF process, because we have to remember that this draft, which this presentation about, was not written because of requirements coming out from 3GPP. 3GPP started to do this work, and they saw that, okay, there's this IETF draft. I mean, okay, it's an individual draft, so they should have understood, but some people don't really see that. They see that there's an IETF draft, and then assume this is something that the IETF is doing. So just to keep in mind of that, this draft is not written based on requirements. The only thing which I did or helped Rifat doing was to describe the IMS use case, how the IMS is using this draft. But again, the draft is not written by 3GPP or anything that came out of 3GPP. I mean, the basic mechanism in the draft was there before, and 3GPP adopted it.
Yes, Adam, there's a requirement space in 3GPP that's very high level. It's not until you almost get to the real detailed stuff that you start to get into these specific issues and how to solve the problem. So, yeah, we need to try to do better on that. And certainly the fact that 4 meetings have gone by since we last discussed this is not good. I think that we should have worked more on this offline in between.
Yeah, I would suggest, rather than a conference call, my concrete proposal is that people are serious about trying to figure out a way to reconcile what seems to be a pretty wide variety of requirements from different identity architectures and systems that we're exploring, that we dispatch something that has that requirements as its focus. I don't want to have a conference call with some people in SA3 about this. I don't think that is productive. I think if we want to solve the problem, here at the IETF, then we should have a dispatch of this problem.
28 minutes, okay.
Robert Sparks, that would make a nice container to actually get some communication going back and forth about what exactly the content of the conversation we've been asking to have would be.
And I think the alternative to that approach is, 3GPP does what it wants, and we don't rubber stamp it, and whatevs.
Again, yeah, the header extension that this draft does is not only used by 3GPP. Again, it's something that 3GPP found. They found this draft, and they adopted it. It's also used for these other use cases. For example, the enterprise single sign down. So I agree what's been said here. But
are you saying that there's non-standard SIP out in the wild? Oh my God! Again.
No,
yeah,
I mean,
and the way that. However, right. Yeah, but you're not going to. Just because it's in the wild is not the reason to standardize it.
I mean, if you're saying that, okay, 3GPP, go and do your thing, you don't need to standardize it, that's fair, fine, but I don't think that's...
We have liaisons and stuff to say you shouldn't do that, but you did this, not us. So, I mean, if you want this to get down to liaison statements, who wants to start on this?
I guess I'm repeating myself, but I don't think it's really productive to have this 3GPP versus or this fight here. But again, they found this draft. They assumed wrongly that this is something that's moving forward in IETF, and they added a reference to
All right,
that.
so-
So stop.
I
don't
wanna
believe
cut the
that's
line.
right. Don't, that they found a draft and believed that we were moving forward with it. Like, they all know how standards work. It's a very
No, they
professional
don't
group.
all know how standards work.
Yeah, they know how this stuff works. Because it always works the same way with us. We hear about it after it's too late to change.
Yeah.
So, I'm trying to make an argument for you here. I actually have heard use cases of enterprise customers who are interested in using OAuth and a single sign-on context to sign on to soft phones inside of an enterprise as a way of identifying. I think you've repeatedly said that there are more people than just 3GPP that are interested in this. This is Colin Jennings, by the way. I don't know if I ever said my name, speaking of identity. You gather up a bunch of the people who are interested in this, you discuss the brings it, and you bring it to dispatch. I mean, that's how we move forward with something as big as this. This is a huge change as a whole new authentication mechanism. So,
Right.
Seems like a perfect thing to dispatch. And I agree with you that there are more people who have at least expressed interest. Maybe when we dig into what's really needed, we'll see they don't align or whatever, but that's the point of a mini BOF or something, is to see whether there's a bunch of aligned interests.
So just administratively, we do now have someone who can present. What happened? Oh, we have someone who can present the adopted draft here. We're going to cut off conversation on this. Gene and I will confer with our area director and try to figure out the path forward on this. And thank you very much for the input. So, Alde, are you now ready to go? Let's go ahead and try this here.
Okay, can anyone hear me? Or see me?
Yes,
Cool.
it's on.
Yes, you're a little bit quiet. If you can adjust your mic gain or get closer.
Let's see. Does this work?
That's good. Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
This is a bit unprepared. Just saw the slides from Dale. But going back, we've been working a long time with trying to fix a problem we found at a SIPIT a few years ago with locating SIP servers and setting up a working flow with a SIP server in a dual stack network. That means both dual stack client and dual stack server. The first draft in a series of documents we want to produce is now, as I understand it, in working group last call. I think we've discussed in previous SIPCORE meetings the problems we've seen and potential solution. This first draft focuses on solving the DNS issues, where we have consulted with DNS Directorate at the IETF, as well as had numerous discussions on in the SIP forum IPv6 group. Then we took it all the way to IETF. So we didn't rubber stamp this in the SIP forum. We went back to the IETF to fix it. Anyway, with dual stacks, it is important that we actually get a set of DNS records and then figure out how to set up the connection. When looking at happy eyeballs for HTTP, they don't use DNS SRV records and they haven't got UDP. So we had a bit of a different problem. And we had a discussion at a previous IETF meeting about the wording we see a problem with in 3263. We can agree on that it's not clear. We couldn't agree on what it actually said. So I think this draft clears that up and makes it very clear for implementers that we need to look up both IPv4 and IPv6 records. So that's the part really about the current draft. Further work we need to do in this group is to look at what we need to do. I'm now on the slide remaining work. I've been jumping a bit. We need to look at what to do with the data we got from DNS, how we actually set up working flows. And here Dale and I have different ideas, but that's a good thing. I think for TCP and other connection-oriented protocols, we can simply follow what's in the Happy Eyeballs implementations out there currently. But for dear old UDP, I see that the recommended solution should either be kill UDP, or if we can't, use something like SIP outbound, where you set up and actually select a working flow at registration time, and then reuse that flow both from server to UA and UA to server for calls, messages, and other SIP transactions. That's one way of handling UDP. Another way of handling UDP is something Dale has come up with, which I can't really go into detail on. But this is further work that we need to look at in more detail in this group as soon as we're done with this. I know Dale have started writing something. We've been having both on-list and off-list discussions. So I think we're on our way, and we'll have our document fairly soon as a starting point for further discussions. And Dale has documented here on the slide deck that it is important that we per site can change target order, and also that the owner of the service, by setting priorities and manipulating the DNS SRE set, can actually indicate the service side order of preference of address families. So nothing strange there. I think that's about it. I know Dale have on the last slide some ideas on how to handle UDP without SIP outbound by adding a new SIP extension called group in order to avoid the service side seeing this as two different transactions. So he wants to indicate that if you see a copy of this request in another address family flow somewhere else in your service, do see it as one request, not actually two requests. Okay.
Okay, so Ollie, do you have enough context to speak to the contents of the slides that Dale has presented here and the current state of the document, the changes that have been made since the last time we talked about it?
I don't have the changes in my head, and I don't see he documenting that on the actual slide deck he had.
Okay. We were going to try to get Dale. Going to continue our attempts to get Dale on, but he appears to have just disconnected altogether. Huh. As he tried switching browsers.
So this is Robert. To my knowledge, there aren't any open questions really. Part of what we were wanting to do here was to reconfirm the end of the working group last call process.
That was the plan, yes.
Have the opportunity to iron out anything that had come up on the list.
And there really wasn't anything.
Well, there was the one small thing about adding some clarifications around when you are doing the SRV dance and when you're doing the
IPv6 address sorting
and
thing.
There's proposed text in that I think is pretty clear about that.
I think we discussed taking, I think Adam wrote an example of some records, and we wanted maybe to include them in this document or the other document coming.
So sure, including the example I don't think would hurt.
Right. I think it would be a good thing to do.
Yeah,
so let's try this a different way.
The last changes according to the draft is that we've been going back and forth on whether this should update 3263, but right now it says updates 3263 and 6157. we acknowledged some contributions from Simon Perrault and had some minor wording changes, but that was the last set of changes, very minor.
Right. What does this change that causes it to need an update?
Update to it, to 3263? This changes the way that you handle sending requests to addresses, if I recall correctly, right? There's going to be...
Let me answer. 3263 was silent on one part, and that was it provided incomplete guidance on what happened if you had more than one interface. There are pieces of 3263 that say, pick one and use that. There are others that intimate that you might be able to maybe choose both and try them at the same time. The core part of this draft is saying, yes, you can do these both at the same time. Here are the ways that you can resolve inside the address families what you should be trying to do. So it's a fairly straightforward thing. I've done my working group last call review of it. I don't see any real rough spots in it. So whether it's going to change the world, we'll see. But
Well, it was hard to move forward with.
So what I was going to ask is sorry, can you repeat that? I was talking over you. I apologize.
No worries. We have pretty long distance from Sweden to Buenos Aires. It's really hard to go forward with any happy eyeballs work without having this document as a starting point, because it's unclear, and we've been having this discussion for a long time. It's unclear whether we will, after following 3263, will we have either A or Quad A, or will we have both? And this RC actually very clearly states both. And discussions have been flowing on the mailing list, but I think the last agreement, people told us that this really updates 3263. So Dale added that back. I think we have added it and removed it twice before, after various discussions.
Right, and I suspect that the final arbiter of that will probably be the IASG anyway, so we'll probably put this through with our best guess, and there will be discussion.
And I'm not anticipating real trouble. So, at a very high level, I think the situation we were in here is that we were holding a good place to have a conversation if any detailed discussion needed to happen, and we got here and we didn't really need the detailed discussion. I'm glad we had the meeting anyhow. I'm sorry that the things are a little bit rough on the virtual presenter point of view. And I think we're learning from that. I think we've got we've re-identified a spot where we can start working on our relationship with 3GPP. So it's a net effect of a net good effect for having met. But I think we've done what we can do. So I would suggest as an individual participant that we hope to see if we've got any AOB, and if not, we just stop.
I was going to do a quick query just to make certain that, of people who read the draft, they didn't have any further issues they wanted to raise in this room, although I imagine they probably would have by now. So just one final call for that. I see no one standing up. I really do not. And then, as Robert suggested, I think I agree. I'll call if there's any other business people want to discuss for SIPCORE. I think at this point we probably have like 12 minutes. So I guess if he were able to get on right now, perhaps, but I don't think there's exactly. I think true. However, I don't think that in and of itself it's. I agree with Robert's evaluation situation. I mean, not for this document. There's like future work that he's proposed. But that's pretty much it, yeah. So, all right. Thank you very much for showing up.
Blue sheets?
I was gonna say, make certain that if you're in this room, put your name on the blue sheet. Otherwise, we may end up in a janitor's closet next time, which might be about the right size if I put it on a Friday again. And have a pleasant trip back to wherever you may call home. Enjoy the rest of your time here in Buenos Aires. Thanks.
Thanks, Ole.
Thank you, Ole.